Hello, and welcome back to the State of Education, presented by One Room Education. I'm Katie Jones, the founder of One Room Education, and we're on a mission to empower parents, students, and educators to take back control of their education to help foster the most free and prosperous generation yet. Today, we are continuing our conversation with Dr. Mary Cochron on pretty much anything related to testing that I wanted to ask her. We spent just over 3 hours of conversation. So this is a part 2 of our discussion with Dr. Mary Cochron. And we're going to be diving into quite a few topics specifically associated with actionable steps that you can take as a parent or guardian of a student or as a student yourself to help mitigate the effects of high stakes testing. And we also talk about some things that the administration can do to help as well, and what they can't do to help, as well as some general backdrop of the education system. So thank you so much for joining us for part 2, and let's get to it.
Like if they're dealing with smaller classes, fewer adults, just smaller campuses, because shifting ideas because this is, honestly, there's stuff I've probably said on this podcast interview that I could have gotten fired for in different jobs I've had. So
yeah,
some of my ideas.
And isn't that crazy?
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, probably.
You haven't said anything like anywhere near as controversial as what I've said in the past. And that's what people, okay, so I just want to interject here. That's what people don't understand that are not in the education sphere, okay? On the teacher side of things or the admin side even. The amount of pressure that you have to conform to the status quo is astronomical.
Oh, yeah.
Because other teachers don't want to look bad. If you're I've been on the receiving end of my class was doing so much better than everyone else's. So bullying among the teachers happens, or they try to find a reason to get you in trouble, for your job, even because they just don't, it becomes an ego struggle. And don't even get me started on if you get the teachers unions involved, and how that clique works. If you want to learn more about that, I have 2 full episodes and an entire article about how that works. So, feel free to take a deep dive. But
I got to tell you, I was telling something to my husband last night. We were having a conversation about something, and he said, I just don't understand, because I was expressing my concern over, I talked to a daughter of a friend who is a new teacher. She's walking. It's the beginning of her 2nd year.
Okay.
And I was expressing
baby teachers. They're so cute.
Yeah. And she always wanted to be a teacher, right? I mean, she's from a family of educators, right? So she's got tons of resources. She's got, she's spent a lot of time in classrooms. She has all of the things that she's already, it's at the time of this recording, right? It's the end of September. Okay. On her 2nd year. And she's just so disheartened. And she's the exact kind of person we want working with the kids. And I was trying to explain something to my husband. I said, look, she is the exact kind of person that we want working with our 5 and 6-year-olds, because she understands 5 and 6-year-olds, very real, right? And she can nurture them in a way that I couldn't. I was a secondary teacher for reasons.
Girl, preach it. I'm secondary because little kids freak me out in large numbers.
Yeah, but you know what? Give me those stinky, mouthy teenagers.
Oh my God, that's my jam. Alternative ed,
let's
give me ankle bracelets and lost causes, and I am there for it. But
because there's an understanding there, right? There's a compassion to it. There's an empathy, right? And that allows you to communicate with these kids, right? And as I was saying, she communicates with these kids so well. But what that means is she's not necessarily adept and skilled in dealing with adult level politics.
And that is what so many, especially elementary. So one of my best friends from college was one of those people. Oh my God. I will never say anything bad about her in regard to how she teaches, the compassion that she has for her students and their families. Those are the type of people that we want around our kids, that we demand to be in the school system.
Yes.
But the school system itself, it is a political entity because, again, it's a government institution. And we're not training those soft-hearted, good people for that sort of cutthroat political environment that they're going to go into.
But like, then there's the assumption that it has to be like that. And I think that that we really need to, I think this is something to look at as a society, is like, what is the role of the school? Are we intending to nurture our children with the people who are the best at doing that? And we need to find every way to support those people in that space. And you know, in my personal experience, when I was a teacher, I struggled with the people who were organized to protect the teachers, otherwise known as the union, because I think there's something to, and I'm not saying they don't have a role, but I think
they definitely, that's why it took me 2 episodes, because it's very complex.
Well, I haven't seen the episodes, but I have something I want to say.
Sorry, go ahead.
That like, we have to remember, like, they're not there for the kids. That's not their job. They're there to protect the adults. That, I mean, come on. It's like, you know, police unions are not there to protect the community. The police union is to protect the police officers. That's their job. And so, like, these stories about it's all for the kids, it's all for the kids. It's like, that's not, no, like, you're using that as a like a grandstanding, like, political line, you know, kind of like
to make people feel bad and look bad whenever they don't fall in line with you. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's like, no, like, that's not the design. That's not what this entity exists for.
Yeah.
So, like, let's just, like, own it for what it is. They're protecting the adults in the situation. And sometimes the adult absolutely needs protection. And sometimes they're not good for kids. But that's why we have due process, and we go through things, and there are ways for, you know, for people to be pulled out of these employment situations when they're not a good fit. But you know, it just bugs me when I see this, like, grandstanding about it, you know, all we care about is the kids. And it's like, well, then you're not even doing your job as a union person. You're not even owning up to what your job is to protect the adults.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I think that might sound crazy, but
no, that pretty much sums up the whole 2 episodes.
Oh, really?
That's pretty much a summarization of those 2 episodes.
Never thought you'd hear that from a bean counter now, did you?
To be fair, I never said you were a bean counter.
I know. I'm giving you a hard time.
So I am going to mention this. There is a difference between people that know what they're doing and see the beyond the numbers and understand what it is that they're actually calculating. And then there's the savants that sit there with pocket protectors and literally can't do anything but look at the numbers. They don't understand anything beyond the math equations. Those second people that somehow have a pocket.
Is that how you define a bean counter?
That's how I define a bean counter.
Okay.
So it's somebody that literally can't see beyond the numbers. They don't see any of the individual worth of the person behind the numbers. That's what a bean counter is. You're an assessment person that's trying to make sure that everybody gets an equal shot, an equal platform to start out on. That's completely different than the government bean counters that don't care. Completely different things.
I have to admit, though, like, in my career, I have not come across very many people that I would classify as bean counters that don't care. However, I have come across a lot of people who look at this problem and they feel like it's too big and it's unsolvable because it's a systemic issue.
It really is.
And so, you know, there's a lot. There are people out there like me that are working in assessment, and they're doing what they can. And so, you know, I guess maybe it's my mission in life to be the siren call to say, come on, guys, we got to do something here, you know, because I think it needs to change for the benefit of our kids and our society at large, right? There's only so many levers that you can push on in a society to make change for good. And education is absolutely one of those levers.
Absolutely.
And that's not the only one, but it's the one that I can see, and the one I feel really strongly about. And yeah, you know, assessment test is a 4-letter word.
Really is, though.
And it doesn't have to be.
And that's one of the things that's why One Room's mission is to empower parents, students, and educators, because it is an ecosystem where everyone has to work together to make this happen. And that's why I love you and like your mission and what you're doing, because I can talk to parents and I can make parents see kind of the general gist of what's going on. But because I talk about homeschooling a lot, primarily, a lot of the public school stuff just gets mad at me immediately, and they don't want to talk to me because, oh, well, she's a homeschool advocate and she doesn't want to, she's just going to make us look bad and all that stuff. I don't care where you send your kid to school, as long as they're getting the education that they're entitled to as an American citizen, which is a baseline to be able to participate in our democratic republic. And our systems, our government, our society depends on a citizenry that can continue to inform themselves beyond a classroom. And that's not, in my opinion, I'm not really seeing that being the main driver that's being facilitated in the public education ecosystem anymore. It's all about funding and who can get the most stuff and who can get the best test scores, and the kids are there, but they're just kind of a tool, an accessory tool for all the stuff that the adults around them want to accomplish. And that sounds a little bit harsh maybe, but that's the quickest, most base level that I can break it down to. And it's not to say that there are not absolutely amazing educators. There are amazing educators. There are compassionate people. There are administrators that are on the ground, principals that are in the halls talking to their teachers, talking to their students, actively involved every single day. Those are the people that we want. We want those people to be there for our kids that can't be educated at home.
And they're not staying, guys. They're not.
They're actively being driven out by the systemic issues.
And they're because they don't know if they can make a difference. And you know, if anybody listening right now is one of those people, just hang on. You're not the only person that's seeing this, Katie. I mean, the numbers are telling the story here. Okay. Their enrollment is dropping across the 50 states in public schools. If that's not a call to action for public schools to look at what they're doing, I don't know what's going to be.
Yeah. And
this isn't a partisan conversation either.
It shouldn't be.
Well, but it isn't. The reason I say that is because it's happening in blue and red states.
Yes.
This isn't something that's just happening in liberal areas or conservative areas. Okay. Like, COVID accelerated something that was already happening. The shift and the desire for parents to make other choices was already gaining momentum. And there were more homeschool families in 2020 than in 2010. Okay. But COVID just amplified this trend.
Yeah.
And so like I said, if this isn't a call to action to those that believe in public school, and I'll tell you, I believe in the idea of public school. I do think it's a good use of tax dollars. I do think that we should we should afford the same opportunities to get great education, no matter what family life our kids are coming from.
Right.
It should be an equalizer, and it shouldn't matter what zip code, right, these kids are living in, should not determine the quality of education that they're getting. That was like that was the great plan and vision of public school. That was a part of it. And I do believe in, but there's some, you know, systemic issues that need to be changed. And I mean, I'm just looking at assessment, you know. There's other things too that are going to require some shifts to make things better and better for the kids. So, yeah.
Yeah. And teachers that are in the classroom, they're not going to like the shift. They're going to, a lot of them will kick and scream and fight because, I mean, let's be honest, if it's not the way that we want to do stuff, we're going to complain just as people. That's what we do.
I mean, teachers along a lot of people, like they don't like the way things are, but they like change less.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But that's not just true to teachers.
Yeah. And that's why like the older teachers will a lot of times just like look at the new teachers and be like, okay, honey, give it a couple years. You'll come right back down to earth where the rest of us are. Well, because a lot of times like trust. The new teachers come in and we're super excited and we're super ambitious and we're going to do all these new, which are really super old, like strategies for learning. And we're going to have a circle classroom set up instead of a row classroom set up. And it's going to be like all these things. And we have these great ideas and ambitions. And somewhere along the way, the bureaucracy kind of breaks us down. And I think I would love your opinion. This is related, but not directly, to the amount of data that the teachers are required to gather on a daily basis for the district reasons. And what, like, how that, like, level of bureaucracy takes away from the organic flow of a day for a student and a teacher. And, like, so I don't know. Is that something you can touch on? Like,
yeah, I can talk about that. Heck yeah.
It's data gathering. It's all the same, right?
Yeah. Well, it is though. Yes, it's still measurement. Okay.
Yes.
So, when I don't know why I'm taking certain measurements, then it's now this other different thing I have to do in addition to, right?
Yes.
And so, yeah, no, like, yes, there are data collections happening, whether it's academic, whether it's social emotional learning, whether it's engagement, whether, you know, like all these different things. And they're trying to get information because we have fostered this ideology of data-driven decisions.
Yeah.
Okay. Which it's not bad in its, you know, but the, you know, what is the phrase my uncle used, and I didn't understand it until I was an adult? The path to hell is paved with good intentions, right?
Yes.
Yes. But what we have created is a culture that overvalues certain kinds of data over other data. Okay. And so, and then it also has separated the data collection from the kind of more artistic and, you know, intuitive even, you know, decisions that teachers are making, right? Because now we've taken the power away from them, and then we've made it this system level local assessment thing that we have to do and follow their rules and follow their curriculum and do their thing, right? It doesn't, I don't feel like I have freedom anymore because I don't understand what this test is testing. I don't actually understand how this relates to what I'm teaching day in and day out. So now I don't understand as a teacher, if I don't understand what I'm collecting, what this test tool is, you know, collecting, if I don't understand that, I don't know what my actions are to take to make it change.
Right.
That's what we've done. We've disempowered our teachers and also our administrators from understanding, well, what actual actions can I take that will increase scores? Because we've made the scores the goal, not the goal the goal. Okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to keep going back to Goodhart's Law.
I love it though.
And so that right there is why we have, you know, this sense of I don't know how to make I don't know how to make positive impact on my students on this measure because I don't understand what it's measuring really. And I don't know what actions I can take, right? And that in and of itself is disempowering to our teachers. It's disempowering to our administrators too, because they're trying to help their teachers in different ways, and they have, you know, a goal to increase the scores, and a few tricks here and there might help a little bit. But it doesn't provide any kind of lasting systems or change. It doesn't provide lasting impacts on how instruction is approached, how assessment is done as a part of instruction, how these tests, which, like I said before, it's not the state tests that are getting bigger necessarily. Most states, they're not, okay? Most states, they're pretty streamlined as almost they can be, okay? But it's this middle part, these local assessments, that's exploding. And that's why we've got way too much testing, and it's separate and different from their instruction. And that's that disconnect. And now and then what do we do with that data, Katie?
That's
right?
what I was just going to say. Why
now
is
we're
that?
Collecting
so is
it,
it
we
just
don't know
like
what to do with it?
Is it just that like school boards are okay, so for those of you who don't know, I'm pretty sure in all 50 states, your school is run by a local entity called a school board, because we do have international listeners. So in the United States, we have it's supposed to be a bottom-up power structure, supposed to be, where we have a local government and then a county government, a state government, and then the federal government. The school system is set up exactly the same way, where you have your local school district jurisdiction, your state jurisdiction, and then your federal Department of Education. And they all talk to one another essentially.
Well, and they have different sets of responsibilities, so it's not purely hierarchical.
Right.
And you have jurisdiction at the school level as well, because most states require some kind of like school level council, like a school site council or a school level committee, So I was talking to a lady from the UK, and I was trying to explain like the US structure, because it's so different from most other places with the way that we set stuff up, and the autonomy that our individual school districts have is something that a lot of places, pretty much anywhere else in the world doesn't have, especially in regard to their schooling. So our individual school districts are run by typically a school board that then does the hiring of the school administration. So the superintendents, the principals, just kind of the top-down hiring. And then the school boards. So who's responsible for all the testing? Is it the school boards that are the school boards are elected officials? Everyone else within the school district is hired or appointed by the school board members. So who wants more testing? Is it who wants the testing? What is it being used? I know. So where's it coming from? Why are we doing it? Yeah. Okay.
Why are we even doing it? Like, why do we need these many tests? And I know whenever I was in the classroom, I got in trouble because I didn't have as many grades on the books, because I did a lot of verbal spot checks for understanding, and that was my assessment. And I got in trouble for not having enough grades on the books.
Okay, so you asked the question, I gave you a flippant answer of who wants more testing. Nobody
you're
wants
fine. Yeah,
more
go.
testing. But what people do want is they want less testing. This is very consistent at the local level in terms of school districts, even like county. There's kind of that county level too that has different responsibilities. It might be parish, and it might be like a service district area that's kind of between the district and the state. Okay, so some states have that level too.
I was gonna say, I don't know that we have that here, but that's, again, individual states are responsible for their own setup.
Yep. And so kind of every state's a little different. One state doesn't even have districts. Hawaii, the State Department is the district. It's a single district state. For some reason, that makes sense for Hawaii. Well, I don't know why. It's driven by population, right?
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to, is like the kind of the population size has influenced the levels of government that was necessary. Okay, but I digress. Who wants more testing? Nobody wants more testing. But people do ask for at the school level, the local level, boards ask for this, politicians want this. They want less testing and more information. You square that one. You tell me what the answer is then. They want more information, but less testing.
I don't think they know what they're testing for. I think that that's the problem. I think they're just throwing a whole bunch of spaghetti at the wall and hoping that something will stick so that they can use it for their next campaign headline. And that sounds really bad, but that's like, that's just kind of the way I see it, because they don't know, like, if you have to have all of these assessments, then you obviously don't know what you're trying to, like, you're scrambling and panicking to try to figure out what's going to work.
Well,
like,
yes, because it shows that you're doing something.
Yes, and you must be doing something. Oh my, we must do something.
We have to be doing something.
Yeah.
And so it is a way to say, hey, we're doing this program. Here's the tests that come with it. Here's the data in this acceptable format of statistical data, right? Because, you know, and then, well, now we have this other priority because we want to fix all of the things, right? So we have this other priority. So now we're going to do a survey to collect, you know, student perception on how safe they are in schools.
And this is all the stuff that I just was mentioning, with like all the random data collection that the teachers have to do.
Yes. And so then they're like, well, when do I teach?
Why? Yeah.
And I don't blame them. I don't blame them because there isn't a lot of time, right? and so yeah, and so this is why a lot of my career I have advocated for less data collection, because if we don't have a very purposeful use for the results, and we know that measurement tool that we're using, because that's all we're doing. These are calipers and rulers, Katie. Tests are not some magical tool to help us see into the brain.
They're not fairy dust that's going to make sure that our kids succeed in life.
No,
what?
No, they aren't. They're
and that's how they're sold to parents and kids.
Well, not for me.
No, that's why I'm working with you, because I love you and you're like real and honest about how things work. Like that's why I love you, because you can
see it how we were.
You can articulate what I'm trying to think. Like I could put together half a sentence and tell you to make it sound smart, and you could go off for 20 minutes and I'm like, yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, what she said.
Yeah, pretty much.
I love that. Because I sometimes feel like it's my wild rantings of and you know shouting into the wind. But yeah, that's I see it too. You know, these like random data collections, and in this effort to be data driven, of this effort to always know what's going on, right? Because to be honest, it comes down to this: it's harder the other way.
Yeah,
and the other way is deep instructional practice, planning. Embedding and integrating your classroom level assessments in a way that you can, as a teacher, produce information that is of a quality or standard. It looks like what a test would produce, that can be simplified and summarized. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And we're taking something that's really kind of messy. Like, kids learning is kind of messy because people are messy. Yeah. You know, and so they're people. So it's a way of it's an easy way, as dumb as that sounds, even if I say it, the words, but it's an easier way to show we're doing something. Yeah. It's also
more of a platitude.
It can be,
from my viewpoint, from like the way I've seen it used in my personal experience. It comes off as a platitude that you can put on your website.
Oh, like, sure. Yeah.
Like data-driven curriculum. Making sure every student has the same whatever. You know, like fill in the blank. Everyone involved in education knows where I'm going with that. Like, it makes it look good for parents on the website that aren't involved in the education system directly. But the words sound really great.
Well, yeah, I mean, they were good ideas, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was better than not having any information. But
right.
I think at this point, I don't actually like the word data. I know I said test is a 4-letter word. I see data as a 4-letter word because it hides what people are talking about. I don't ever want to hear the phrase, the data shows. No. I want to hear, from this reading test of these students, we saw this change to this change. Okay.
So actually explaining what the numbers tell the...
Yes.
You're not statisticians. What do you call yourselves? You know, I can never say it.
Oh, psychometricians?
Yes.
Yeah, but those are like, those are the specialists that are building the statistical models. Like,
yeah,
this is language that's used in, in planning meetings and, school meetings at the beginning of the year, and it's a way of covering and it's not specific. So what I hear are phrases like, the data shows readings increased. That doesn't mean anything to me.
No.
From this point to this point on this measure, we're seeing this gain. Now I have an understanding of what we're talking about. Now I can connect it to something or ask questions around, well, what does that measure actually tell us? Mm-hmm. Are we talking about all kinds of reading? Are we just talking about, different features of reading? What does it look like? Right. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. I really don't like the use of the term data in practice, because it's so, well, it's such a shortcut and it's lazy. And it doesn't give enough context as to the information that you're trying to convey. And it makes it easier to do really fun, weird things with numbers that aren't sound for the measurement tool, the test that they're referencing.
And do you think that's maybe a reason why it's used that way?
Possibly. I think it's
because if you say that, like, using your example, if you say that third grade reading scores are up, okay, where? Like, reading is such a big thing.
Oh, what measure?
Yeah. So what measure are you looking at? Are you looking at reading comprehension? Because I can guarantee you that is down. Like, just as a tutor, I can tell you that's down. If you're looking at being able to recognize words within a context, that's a completely different thing than full passage understanding and comprehension, right?
Right.
Like, these are all very different parts of the same test.
Yeah.
So
maybe it may not include, it may not every test is made the same. Like, there are, when you set out to create a test, you have to first define the constructs that will be measured. So, like, what are the ideas, the thinking processes, the skills, the knowledge, or the abilities that are being measured? And then you have to decide, okay, at what level are we going to measure then? And what I mean by that is, are we going to go really deep into this one construct and have lots of questions that are going to be all the different levels of the learning progression? And then we're going to get really good information on where a student is on this one construct. Or are we going to have lots of different constructs, and we're going to sample a little bit here and there, and we're going to get a general idea about a skill in a content area? Okay. And so you can have something that says reading score, okay, on one test that is built like the first description. It's deep, and it's looking at lots of different features and sets of knowledge within the skill set of reading. Or it can be called reading, and it's this survey kind of approach to this
general overview, as opposed to the deep contextual understanding of the topic.
Yeah, and so the results would be used very differently, because it's giving you different information. And that level of assessment understanding, we call it assessment literacy, is something I feel very strongly about. That's the learning, I think, that needs to happen with teachers and administrators, and our upcoming, our training teachers in training, our administrators in training, our experienced educators, right? They may not really have that level of understanding of how these tools are created, and that absolutely dictates what those results mean and how they can be reasonably used. Because once we use those results in a way that does not align with how that test was created, we have invalidated that use. It's no longer valid. I see a lot of data collection for the sake of data collection. I have seen a lot of data unused and unreferenced.
Yeah.
Because they feel like they need to show that they're doing something. So they're producing a lot of data.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that that absolutely contributes to this lots of testing behavior. Mm-hmm. And explosions of these tools being used at the local level to try to fill this gap or this perception of a gap of no information between the classroom level assessments and those state assessments. And so, yeah, I think that's where it's coming from. But it does come back to that, you know, we want more information. And when I say we, I'm talking about decision makers, leaders, the school boards, the state boards. We want more information, but they don't want more testing. And what happens is the push for more information just sneaks in more testing.
Right. It trickles down to if the state level says that they want something, state or federal, either one. If they say that they want more data on something, and it's sort of like that like, I want to say dog whistle almost, for the local level to step in and fill in that gap.
Yeah, but the call for it, I think the whistle's being blown at the local level more than anything else. And state.
Is it like an overreaction to like upper, like that's what I'm trying to understand is like where it's coming from. Like where is the incentive for these extra pieces of data coming from?
Oh, it's definitely coming from the state or local levels.
Okay. So
the federal like ESSA didn't add more. It gave flexibility options. Like they were trying to like give some more design flexibility, but it didn't really require more data in that part of the assessment requirements. Right. The data collection changes have been happening at the state and the local levels. And when I say local, I'm talking about those district and if you have that in between the county or parish level, that's the local. It's defined by the federal government as local education agency. They're called LEAs versus the state education agency, the SEA. But it's absolutely, from my experience and my perspective, coming from the state and the local levels. It's not coming from the federal government. Okay.
And is that, again, education is politics to a certain extent because it's a government entity. So is it
somebody's running somewhere?
Right. Everybody's running for an office and wants to get reelected.
Superintendents, you know?
Yeah. So is it one of those things where they want to kind of stay ahead of the curve and ahead of the questions? So they're just kind of preemptively doing these things? Or is it parents and community members are seeing these issues and they're contacting them? So
I don't know what I mean. Can say, like, I feel like it's almost a chicken and the egg kind of question, right? Because I see a lot of reactionary behaviors from state departments and districts, you know. But like, you know, I think that the greatest failing, honestly, of reactionary behavior that happens in assessment is that there are calls that the rate of students not being proficient, right? Students not being on grade level. There's so many students that aren't making grade level, right? This is terrible. This is how like something has to be done. Right? Yeah. And the greatest failing that has been I've seen it time and time again, the decision to fix that is to change the test. And it's akin to, I hate the way my scale looks when I step on it in the morning because the number keeps going up. Yeah. Well, forget this. I'm getting rid of the scale. Yeah. That doesn't address the real issue. And because the real issue is going back to and supporting the instruction and making sure that they have high quality curriculum and that they have the time to actually dive into and teach that information to the students so that we're getting to the real goal here is student learning. But that's the harder way, right, to go. Right. It takes time. That's the other thing. So you see these really drastic changes in getting rid of a test and replacing a test, right? And it's always like, oh, we're finally getting rid of this terrible test. It was terrible. We hated it. You know, children cried when we, you know, it was like, lots of adult behaviors in the situation. Not, like tests don't make the kids cry. Like, but the environment we put them in, right? So gets that emotional reaction, produces that. But it's flashy, and it can be done in a term for the most part. I mean, it takes actually years to build a test, like on the large scale. Like it takes years. It can
be rolled out in a single term.
But the change can be announced, and the work can start in a single term. And I've seen more decisions like that have been made for political reasons than the actual like any kind of benefit for the system. Yeah, unfortunately. And I think that's the greatest, that right there is the greatest like failing of logic. We don't like the tests because we don't like the way they make us feel. And we don't like the outcome. We don't like the results. So clearly what we have to do is change the test so that we have a new test that we hate. And I don't like the way it makes me feel. And it doesn't give me the information I used to get on this other test now.
Yeah. And the same thing with the curriculums. The curriculum, revolving door that happens every year or two in school districts to perform better on the test, ironically. And it doesn't allow the teachers to get proficient at teaching that curriculum. Yeah, and it doesn't allow the students to settle into learning that way or that particular information in that way. And then you get mad at it because your test scores didn't increase that year. So you toss that curriculum and spend another $500,000 on a new curriculum for the school district.
and we're doing new systems, new professional development with new kind of underpinning of philosophy, right? New approaches, right? And this is why we have the experienced teachers sitting in the back that are like, I've seen this before, this too shall pass. And they have lost their trust in the system. Yeah. And they go back to their room and they do what they're going to do. I understand why these teachers choose to do this. It makes perfect sense to me.
Absolutely.
I don't think that behavior is the way to make things better, but I understand the behavior.
It's a protective mechanism for the teachers.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, I know it's this kind of like lack of patience, for lack of a better phrasing, but I think that there's this general lack of patience that we have to fix all the things right now, and we're not giving our people time in any of the systems to learn the new curriculum, to implement it, to figure out what does and doesn't work, because it takes years. It does take years, because you might be using the same strategies day in and day out, but every day is a new day. Right. And so, you got to repeat that a couple years, 3, 4, 5 years in a row, right? I got a story for you. I was talking to a friend of mine whose family member teaches in 3rd grade. And last year, they just, it's a fairly large elementary school. They've got three classes at 3rd grade. So they've got 3 3rd grade teachers, right? And they were working as a team really well last year, and they had tried some new stuff, and their scores were just, super high. But they didn't even know why they were high. Okay. Because they were trying a lot of new stuff, and they were kind of a new team. I think only one of them had it was like a first year or something. But because of this lack of patience and trust, for whatever reason, that's a whole other conversation. Yeah, that's a different episode altogether. Right. This lack of patience and trust in an effort to share, right, what this 3rd grade team did. The leader in this school decided to take the lead teacher out of the 3rd grade team meetings and make sure that they were a part of the other grade level team meetings to help. No. Okay. But in reality, like, this 3rd grade teacher's like, I don't really know what we did that made this result, because they have one result, and anyone that works in data can be a one-off and statistics. 1 dot doesn't mean much. Now you get 3, you got a trend. Okay. So had they been left to their own devices with some stability, okay, for 2 or 3 years, and we saw this keep coming back to that with students, with teachers, with admin, with just
stable environment.
Yes, stability and consistency. And so what they've done effectively is they've taken, by this choice, taken that lead teacher, and now they're going into these other grade level classes. Effectively, now they don't have as much planning time together as the third grade team. So, and they don't know, reasonably so, they don't know why their scores were so high last year. And so what can we expect from their scores this year? Probably they're not going to be as high, one.
Right. They'll probably be a little bit lower.
But you know, what also has happened is that this poor lead teacher wasn't totally sure why she was being brought into the other grade level meetings, and that upset some other people. And so there's been a union complaint against the third grade teacher because she's not supposed to be supervising her peers. So now we have a really dynamite third grade teacher who is effectively being punished for performing well. So there's this literally is happening right now in the city. Somewhere. Girl. Yeah.
That's a different episode. But
I mean, but it makes the point, like,
I think it's a good example though.
Yeah. And we see like these moments, right, where where a team of folks, of adults come together, and you start seeing a measurable difference with the kids, but we're not quite sure why at first, right? And maybe we give them 2 years. Maybe we give them 3. Gosh, if we can get 3 years of consistency in a school, that'd be amazing.
God.
Yeah, it would be amazing.
Yeah.
And then at that point, they have a good, solid idea of what decisions they made purposefully that is impacting student learning in a way that is measurable on the test.
Right.
And I want to say that again, because that's really important. And it's a part of the mindset shift. I didn't say it increased the test scores, because their purposeful decisions increased and developed student learning that was measurable on a test. Right? Okay. After a few years of that, you know what you can do. Now we can figure out how to systematize and replicate what they're doing. So now that what gets shared with their peers is, here's our systems, here's what we're doing, and this is how we do it. And now this will keep going. And then you're sharing it with the other grades, and then they can start using what is working with that community, with those kids, with the siblings of the kids.
Yes.
All of that matters too, because now you've got your family context. We know it works with this family context. And so, you know, but that takes time. It takes patience. It's not sexy. It's hard work.
Right.
It takes dedication. And we're asking so much of these people. And without giving them the benefit of the doubt to give them the time to make these changes. So yeah, I do see a pathway to make this better, and I do see a route, but it's not a short route, and it's not an easy road. And so that's why it's got to start in these kind of smaller communities, I think.
For sure. And that's something I'm so excited to have met you and become friends with you because you're making me a better teacher too, because the stuff that I knew wasn't working, so I kind of made my own workarounds for you. You're able to explain like an actual structure for that workaround. You're like, that's on the right track, but here's a couple ways to make it better. So I'm actually taking the stuff that you and I are brainstorming and talking about in regard to assessment, and actually applying it to the stuff that we're creating for the one-room classroom. And it's been really fun to look and see, like, because you and I know from our classroom experience, right? I have a little bit different experience because I am a second-generation homeschooler. So I know what that whole world is like firsthand from the student perspective. And now I'm homeschooling my 3.5-year-old for pre-K. And he's almost through kindergarten level curriculum already, but let's not talk about that. So I know what it looks like on that end, and then you're able to bring your expertise in and kind of tweak it a little bit so that it can be a more like standardized formula that I can then put out for other people to replicate. Because that's something that I've been working on for my entire educational career, is creating a system that works no matter what subject I'm teaching. I teach 3 major subjects, right? I teach all the social studies courses. I teach English writing, So like comp level stuff and like research papers and stuff like that. And I also teach environmental science and earth sciences. I guess that's 4 major subjects. But like I teach all of this wide variety of subjects that I teach people on an individualized basis through my tutoring practice. And I also have classroom experience in all of them as well. And taking that experience that I have tweaked that literally works with every single student that will just do what I ask them to. I have never had a student fail if them and their parents are on board with what we're doing. Their grades increase across the board, at least by 2 letter grades, every single time.
And can I ask you, Katie, is it because you're focusing on their ability to learn?
Yeah, absolutely. And
that's the goal.
Shut up, Mary. No. I'm taking so typically whenever people reach out for a tutor, it's because they're panicking because they didn't do well on the first couple quizzes and they're coming up on a cumulative type of exam for that class. That's always when people reach out. Very few people reach out proactively, especially whenever you're looking at the AP subjects, the advanced placement subjects that I like mainly tutor. So
you don't know you have a problem until it's a problem that you can't bail yourself out of.
And then we panic message Katie because she has all 5-star ratings from like hundreds of people. So when I require meet and greets with everybody that I work with. And this is something that public school teachers don't have the luxury of doing.
No.
And it sucks. Don't. But what I do is I have a meeting with them and I say, okay, what's the matter? From their perspective. And I have them explain to me. If their parents give me information, I don't even look at it until after the first meet and greet with the student, because I want to hear what the student's perspective of the issue is, because that's what I'm working with. I'm not working with the parent's perspective or the teacher's perspective. I'm working from that student's perspective of what is happening, what their knowledge base is, they're who I'm trying to help, not anybody else that's around them. So I always start, and everybody is hesitant at first. There's been 2 families that weren't, but everybody pretty much is hesitant at first for my techniques because I want to see photos of their notebooks. How are they taking notes? How are those notes being facilitated by the teacher? I want to see at least one example of a quiz or the type of exams or learning measurements that are happening within the classroom, because maybe it's just the way the teacher words the questions is wonky. So they just need to understand that, like understand the teacher's thought process behind how they're asking the question. Like, right? It might just be something like base level like that, where it's just they're missing each other somewhere on the path. And then I also take a writing sample.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I was just going to say, like, because at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're learning is mediated through human communication. If I can say the word. Right? Learning is mediated through communication, whether that communication is in writing form or in verbal form or, acted out or, like videos and things like that. Right. So what I'm hearing you say is what you're doing is your own collection of evidence of how the learning is being interpreted and what is the landscape of the tools that the student is having to navigate to get to the information. Yes. And then that's also going to tell you, well, then what are the techniques that the student can leverage to then communicate back what they have learned.
Yes, in the way that the teacher wants them to. Yes, that's what I do. Because 9 times out of 10, it is a lack of understanding of the assessment style that's being used. A lot of times it's lack of general study skills. 90% of the time it's note-taking and review that they don't understand how to do. They were never taught that in an efficient manner for them.
It's a skill. And it's a skill, not an ability. It's a skill.
Exactly. It's a skill that you have to practice. And you have to, like, I am working on a course, fun preview for everybody that's listening this far into this episode. God bless you and thank you for hanging out with us. I am actually working on a course to teach note taking the way that I teach my students. And I haven't just taught like middle schoolers and high schoolers. I have worked with note taking on corporate teams that I have been in charge of, and vice presidents of companies, so that they can have better follow up, because Katie takes the best notes. And she ends up being the team lead and the trainer for the departments, right? That's what I do, is I help people build the groundwork and facilitate their own understanding of the information they're being given, is what I do as a teacher and as a tutor. So I'm working on a note-taking course that can be used for everything from, I'm going to say probably like fourth grade up to continuing ed, professional development, higher executive levels, that like professional training type stuff. It can be used literally from fourth grade to professional, like CEO development. Okay. Everybody needs to know how to take notes better. Everyone should be taking notes. Everybody needs to know how to do it efficiently for the way that you learn and the way that you process your own information, because those notes are not for other people. Those notes are for you to reference, for you to understand, for you to be able to process. And that's something that's missing. So I'm actually working on a course to teach people that, how to adapt note-taking strategies so that they actually work for them on an individual basis. And then I'm also working on another course that I'm also going to be teaching personally, because I have a very specific way I want it done. I'm also working on a course that is specifically study strategies for independent style studying. Because let's be honest, most of the homeschooling curriculum is independent study, and I'm a secondary teacher. Most of secondary stuff, once you hit like 9th or 10th grade, pretty much everything is read a book, fill out this paper, right? It's independent study to a large degree, and especially with continuing ed and professional development and stuff like that, the independent study college courses that you can create and take yourself.
Independent study is the skill set that needs to be taught explicitly, because there are so many strategies out there, and you don't just like
it goes with the note taking.
It absolutely does. It absolutely, because that's the tool, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the tools.
Yep.
But like it, as far as it being explicitly instructed on, it's the difference between, what we're basically doing is we're expecting our students to figure out how to play musical instruments by experimenting.
Right.
That's the equivalent of, if we don't instruct explicitly strategies, tools, and techniques of how to go about this thing we call studying,
mm-hmm.
and we're effectively just telling them to go figure it out on their own. Right. And so now they're
exactly.
self-teaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're discovering on their own. And it's such a hugely inefficient way of learning something.
Right. If you're not taught the basic skill of how to do it efficiently for you. And it's something that, this as well as I do. You probably know this better than I do, honestly. There are so many different, so a lot of people focus on the learning style. You have to focus each lesson to at least 2 of the major learning styles and blah, 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 blah. That's okay. Yeah. Cool. Cool story, bro. So what do we do with that?
But do the students know what learning styles they have in this particular content area? Because they are not the same on every content area.
Exactly. And that's something that teachers are not equipped to flip that every time. And parents are taught that once their child has been, I'm going to use the word diagnosed, I don't know of another term. Once they've been assigned, there we go. Once they've been assigned a specific learning style, the parents are like, okay, well, I have to do everything in their life around that learning style. And that's not true. No, you have to teach your student how to receive information in different ways other than their preferred learning style. It's a preferred learning style, not a prescribed necessary learning style.
Oh, that's a really good way of saying it and differentiating, because it is preferred, and it's also it also changes over time.
Mm-hmm.
And it may be preferred right now because this particular strategy really works for me. Mm-hmm. But as the information gets more and more complex, that strategy may no longer be useful. It may not serve them. Right.
Right.
So, no, this is beautiful. I'm so excited. I'm excited to see these courses. I mean, I think it's fantastic.
I might be tapping you for for a little info.
I'm happy to
make
help
sure
wherever
everything's
I can.
on point. But
I'm happy to help wherever I can. Yeah.
That's coming. So the course that we are getting ready to release, hopefully the week that this podcast episode comes out, we'll see, is on the Bill of Rights. It's the Bill of Rights 101 presented by Francis Cook. He's fabulous. I helped him create the actual, like, break it down for grades 6 through 12 into bite-sized, manageable pieces, like you and I have been talking about all evening, right? Mm-hmm. So I helped him create the general structure of the course. And then this is going to be the general outline for all one-room classroom courses, right? So you're going to grab, whenever you log on and you go to your lesson page in your course, you're going to see some teaching tips for that particular lesson. Then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to download your supplementals, right? Is it a worksheet where you're working on like grades 6 through 8 and they just kind of need to memorize the basics of it? Or is it going to be deeper critical thinking questions for the upper levels? And I differentiate between rote memorization questionnaires with like the teacher's answer guide and open-ended critical thought and evaluation of the topic. Right? So you know where your child is. You pick the worksheet or critical thinking sheet that fits your child best. And then you watch the video, the presentation from Francis on what that topic is. Everybody watches it together. It works for all of the grade levels, can do it at one time all together. And then you fill out the sheets. If you're in the younger grade, you can fill it out while you're watching it, or you can hold your kid off if they're 7th, 8th grade, hold off to fill it out and use it as like an end of lesson comprehension check, as opposed to
understanding.
Yeah, as opposed to like a note outline.
Yeah.
And then your younger kids, whenever you're doing your verbal review at the end, your younger kids are reminding the older kids what the basics are, and the older kids help the younger kids get a deeper understanding of that base rote memorization of the facts. And it's this ecosystem of learning that's created within this one lesson on this one topic. And that's how the whole one-room classroom is going to be set up. And I am so excited to see it in action, because this is what I've been working on my entire educational career, is how to take what I do and be able to give it to as many people as possible, so that they can go forth and multiply and, whatever, however you want to put that, like educate each other. And it creates a culture of mutual education and understanding of baseline factual content, and then how to create your own ideas and your own understanding of the world from those base concepts. And I'm so excited to see it in action with the bigger groups. Do you have any thoughts on that general makeup? Any critiques,
Oh, I'm excited.
Mary?
I'm excited because, see, like, if you can turn around and explain to, I think one of the misconceptions of when you have older students or older children explain to younger children an idea is that it doesn't benefit the older child. However, that's absolutely false, because
1,000% false.
Yeah, the act of explaining something and making it understandable to another person solidifies the understanding of the person doing the explaining or the teaching, right? Mm-hmm. But also, if you can't simplify something to explain it to a younger person, then you don't really understand it. I often say, like, hey, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't get it yourself.
So that's really funny, because whenever Francis and I were having our first meetings about creating this course, he has a very high, like, we all, you, me, Francis, we all teach this. So we have a very high level knowledge, base knowledge factor of these topics, right? So he was teaching it at almost like a second year college level. Right. And the amount of assumed knowledge base that had to be there to just jump into the course where he was massive. And I was like, okay, well, I want to take this down to 6th or 7th grade. And he was like, okay. So he gave me a couple of different, he's brilliant, by the way. I love him. I'm so excited about this course, but just the general process.
Oh, the process? Yeah.
Yeah, the general process of creating a course. Like, this is what happens, right? A curriculum. You start with your big concepts, and then you kind of work your way down and kind of chip away until you get to your base knowledge that's required to understand that topic, right? So he finally, by the 3rd draft, I was like, can we get on a call? And he has a daughter, and she's 11. And I was like, okay, dude, if your daughter is 5 years old in a sparkly princess dress with a wand twirling around the living room. He was like, yeah. I was like, will she understand what you just said? He was like, what? I was like, that's the level of bite size that you need to make everything. You need to make it so that you're not assuming a knowledge of anything, especially for an introduction class.
Oh,
like, you have to assume that these people have never even heard of the Bill of Rights. They don't even know what it is. They barely know what the Constitution is, right? You're assuming nothing. So every time he would send me something, I would say, can your daughter, 5 years old, twirling around in her princess dress, repeat what you just said? And that was a great base level, because he was like, I have to, like, he said dumb it down, but you know what I mean. He was like, I have to break it down like that far. I was like, yes, because it's our job to facilitate the understanding of the topic, not assume that they have a base level knowledge of anything. And what he came out with, golden.
I'm so excited to see it. I am so excited to see it.
We actually ended up breaking it into a 101 and a 102 course. So we're getting ready to launch the 101 course, which is a base level. Here's the base level facts that you learn in like elementary school. And then we're able to, through differentiated learning and lesson adaptation, you know how to do that for AP courses and stuff like that. I took the exact same strategies that we use to alter the lessons from a standard course to an AP course. I took that same strategy and just drug it out over a skill level base instead of like a vertical base, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
So I'm so excited. I'm so excited. And teaching people how to teach this way too is amazing, because anybody that I work with for the one room classroom is going to be able to take this and continue it and replicate it in their own lives and the way that they teach things and break stuff down for people. So anyways, I'm really excited.
Exciting.
If you're super stoked, head over to one-roomeducation.com and put in your name and your email address, and I'll send you a link personally as soon as the classroom doors open.
Yay.
I'm so excited. So I think we've covered a lot today. I'm going to be legit. I might break this up into 2 episodes, like a part 1 and a part 2, because that happens sometimes.
It's all good.
The last time I had to do that was with my mom. That was 3 parts.
And I think that we've also called out some things along the way of some things to talk about.
Absolutely.
When we meet again. So I thank you for this time.
No problem.
And I look forward to talking again. And I'm going to keep sending some blog posts your way. And as we figure out other ways that I can help and contribute to your vision, I'm so happy to contribute to that. And I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see what comes of all of this. Because, like I said, anybody working with kids, it doesn't matter what environment you're in, let's do the best by our kids and really help them learn to the best of our ability. And we'll be better as a society. So
absolutely. Learning to listen to each other. What? Shh, don't be silly. I know.
God, you're saying such outrageous things.
I know. I'm such an extremist. So, why don't you go ahead and let people know where to find you and what you're doing? Because compassionate assessment I didn't know there was a word for what I was advocating for. Okay, guys. The thing about education is it never stops, right? You literally never stop learning. And if you do stop learning, then you're probably dead. Or gonna be soon. Like, let's be honest, right? So when I met Mary and she was like, let's talk. I was like, oh, an assessment person, yay. And then I started talking to her and I was like, oh my God, we have to do something together. So why don't you go ahead and just explain kind of the base 4 pillars of compassionate assessment and where people can find you and how they can work with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have created a framework. So all of these things I've been talking about actually I have a framework to identify what are the high leverage activities that you can take in your classroom or in your school that will help shift the thinking around assessment and actually change practice. And that is what I call compassionate assessment. And it includes looking at and attending to the technical quality of the tools that you're using, whether that's at the classroom level, the local level, or understanding the state level assessments, and approaching it as a process. And how do you maintain a really comprehensive and coherent process of assessment as a teacher? How do you encourage that as an administrator? So that's one element, is that technical quality. The second of the 4 elements to attend to is the environment. And when I talk about environment, I'm actually talking about like the classroom environment, the learning environment, the accessibilities and accommodations, and really looking at too, like, how are we preparing for it? And typically that's really where any kind of training around assessment that is done today stops. They talk about the technical quality, give you all that, and they kind of bore people, with these ideas, and then say, well, now you have to do these things to make sure the environment is right, and then it's kind of very strict and whatnot, and that's where a lot of the training stops. And so where I continue, and this is what my research is based on and my framework includes, is attending to the adult attitudes and beliefs around assessment. And so I say adult very purposefully because I'm also talking about families, any of the adults that are around the student in their day, right? That the attitudes, beliefs, their emotions around this thing we call testing is absolutely going to influence the 4th and final and most important pillar, which is the students' attitudes and beliefs about assessment, because that will actually translate into beliefs about themselves, of what they are capable of what they believe they can achieve and what they believe they can do. And so when we attend to all of these pieces, I do know that we can achieve what I call is compassionate assessment, because it's putting the people back into this data-driven world, right?
Right.
I don't think leaving the data is a good idea. I think we should still be collecting in very purposeful and intentional ways information about student progress. I think we need that. We need that for our systems, but this is a way to really put people back into focus as a part of that process. And so, my compassionate assessment framework is something I'm looking to work with more schools and districts right now. I only have so many I can work with this school year, and I only have so many more I can work with. And to work with as soon as possible too, because this is not something that happens overnight, and it's not something you can start that just when you start, testing season for spring testing. And so, I'm really excited to share my compassionate assessment framework and the work behind it and the research that has gone into it. I'm really excited to see it in action in new and different places. And if they want to know more about what I have to offer, I know that I'm giving you a variety of blog postings so they can read a little bit of my thinking. They could also head over to my website. My company is called Metamur, and it's spelled METIMUR, ed.com. It means to measure in Latin. That's what the word means. Metamur ed.com is my website, and my blog is there where I talk I'm talking more to specifically school level administrators for the most part in that space. So if you're one of those, a teacher or administrator at a school or district level, you can come on over to metamureed.com and check out my postings. And I'm going to be putting out a compassionate assessment masterclass very soon. And I'll make sure, Katie, you have that information.
Yeah, for sure.
You can find me on Facebook. You can find Metamure Ed on Facebook, on LinkedIn, coming to Instagram, coming to X, all those things. So you don't miss any of my wild rantings about assessment.
They're always amazing.
Well, I really appreciate the conversation because, my ideas they're somewhat, they're different. And it takes time. It takes time to kind of get beyond the emotional initial reaction.
Right.
Of, oh, you work in assessment.
Yeah. You're the test person.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I didn't, as a little girl, grow up and say, I know someday I'll build tests. That's, I thought I was gonna sing opera and musical theater for my life as an adult. Who knew I would become a boring test person? But
far from boring.
But thank you for the time, because it takes time to kind of peel away the layers of what we're talking about, and to surface these levels of the different levels of assessment in terms of the classroom, the local, the state, why they're different, how they're interacting with each other, and then also talking through, it's not just understanding what they measure, what the results come, environment we should be giving our kids, but also what are those thoughts and feelings that we have as adults in the system of like, oh, this is so messed up, I don't want to do this, and that then gets fed to the kids. They're like, well, I don't want to do it either.
Right.
but yet we want less testing, but more data, and this kind of systemic conundrum we've gotten ourselves into. But I do believe there's a path toward what I call compassionate assessment.
I agree. And I think that the reason that I connected with you so well was because what you talk about is intuitive for most homeschoolers. Like it's an intuitive way of doing stuff. So it seems so uncomplicated that it must not be effective. You know what I mean? So that's why I wanted to make sure to platform you in some way or another, because it's just right. It just fits. It flows naturally with how we know that people learn and retain information. And I think it's really important to get that information out, that there is somebody like you that's trying to help education from the inside. And it's really hard to help someone help themselves. And so I think the more parents and the more community members that get to know about you and what you're doing, and that there are people like you out there that are trying to do good work within the education ecosystem to reform it, that there are people that have the light, that have the way to reform this. We just need to amplify those voices. So the more parents, the more community members that get to know you, the more they can go to their schools and say, hey, have you heard about Mary Cochron? She has this really cool thing, and it's like low stress testing, so maybe you want to check it out. Like, that's my goal with this whole thing, is to make the entire US a model for the whole world about how to run your education system in a compassionate and effective way for the majority of people. And for those who just aren't serviced by the public school structure the best, like there are some kids that they're not going to thrive in that sort of environment. That's fine. One room education has got you. If you're looking at that and you're looking for alternatives, we're here for you. Whether it's with us in the one room classroom, or whether you just kind of want to get some more information on what a charter school is, or how to assess your own kid on their reading level or their style of learning and that type of stuff. Here at One Room Education, we're here to empower you with the knowledge, educating you about education and how you can help. So I'm so excited that we met and that we get to team up.
Me too. Me too. I love it. And
awesome.
The more that we team up, more we're going to find more people like us. And if there's anyone listening that's like that, you've gone this deep, like you're one of us. Okay, so like, let's figure out a way to play together, because that's how we're going to change things.
Absolutely. And you can contact me directly, because I'm handling all the stuff alone right now. I'm pretty sure Mary is over there too. All the emails come directly to me that you submit through the contact page on oneroomeducation.com. So if you have made it this far and you want to contact us, or you have a question, please make sure to submit it either in email form, or you can hit us up on one of our social platforms. You can find One Room Education on X, Instagram, and TikTok at oneroom_ed, and on Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble at One Room Education, all one word. With that, I think we're going to close this amazing conversation for the evening. And I want to thank everyone that hung out this long with us. Mary's right. You're our people. Please get in touch with us in some way. So thank you for being here with me here on the State of Education podcast. If you really enjoy what Mary and I are talking about, and you want to support our combined efforts, or you want to join the One Room Classroom, please do head over to one-roomeducation.com. That's the word one, ONE-roomeducation.com. You can get full access to our blog and our blog section and the entire back catalog of the State of Education podcast, as well as become a member of the One Room Classroom, so that you can support our work and make it so that we can continue to spread the message of freedom through education. With that, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Mary, thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate you.
And I really appreciate you, Katie. Thank you so much.
No problem. And I will see everyone else next time as we continue to discuss the state of education.